well, I was going to ask everyone to introduce themselves. Like, just start at the sentence, what's going on?
I'm Joel. I'm here as a Christian and for the CU. A little bit about me. I'm a second-year law student here, and yeah, so that's what I'm doing here. Would you like to know anything else? Yeah, okay.
Phil, no, cool. I'm Jazz. I'm a PhD student looking at the transmission of religion amongst young British Sikhs. Just started that about 2 weeks ago, three weeks ago. That's it really, yeah. That's what I'm studying. And I'm a Sikh. Yes.
My name's Helen, I'm a Baha'i, and I'm hopefully in the new year going to be starting a PhD in applied ethics in engineering.
Hello, my name's Richard, and I'm here tonight as representing the atheists.
Well, I'm John. I'm a first-year student studying philosophy with artificial intelligence. None. And someone has a saw, that's mildly intimidating.
From security as well.
Don't worry.
I'm Elder Baird. I'm also a Christian. I'm representing the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS for short, or if you prefer, Mormon.
Same here, also representing the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. My name is Elder Keebles. I'm come from Chico, California.
My name is Ollie. I'm here representing Buddhist meditation. I did do an English and sociology degree here, then did a master's, then went away for a bit, and now I'm back here working for the university. So that's a very long way of saying where I come from.
Okay, well, try to open up to the first question.
Make the first one easy. Yeah, of course.
What's your opinion on homosexuality?
Hey,
Directed to anyone in particular, or
just the economy?
Starting at one side or the other?
Go that side then.
Okay. Yes. Homosexuality. That's one of the more difficult subjects when it comes to talking about Christianity. The Bible seems to me quite clear that homosexual acts, at least, are a sin against God. In terms of how Christians would react to homosexuality, I don't think it should ever really. I can't see any reason why someone who's homosexual shouldn't be a Christian. Once they are, it's really up to them to read the Bible and see what it says. I can't. I certainly wouldn't try and rewrite the scriptures. They're quite clearly against homosexuality, but Jesus Christ died for the salvation of all. I don't think that excludes people based on sexuality, although I would not encourage it as a practice amongst Christians.
Okay. Right. The Guru Granth Sahib, the Sikh. It's more than the Sikh scriptures. It's actually venerated as a guru, as the main teacher, the main source of virtues and ethics for the Sikhs. And rather than containing a sort of historical account of the Guru's lives, it actually contains poetry. Poetry about love more than anything else. And in this poetry it says, without love, you cannot attain the divine. It doesn't actually mention homosexuality anywhere. The main focus of the Sikh scriptures is on the personal journey in losing the ego and basically realizing that everyone and everything around you is one. So it doesn't specifically talk about sin. It talks about 5 virtues and 5 vices. The 5 vices are lust, anger, greed, attachment and ego, and those must be lost. And the 5 virtues are truth, contentment, compassion, patience and virtue, and those are what you're supposed to get hold of. So that's it. It doesn't actually mention, so rather than giving a list of rules of right and wrongs, it just says, look, you know, you're a person, attain these virtues, get rid of these vices, and that's it. You'll attain the divine. Okay.
Baha'is believe that we come from a reality that is as more spiritual than it is physical, that we are actually spiritual beings having a physical experience. And in that context, that there are certain rules and certain guidance that can be given to us to assist us in that process. So, for example, if you were unaware of the rule of gravity and were unable to understand why you kept falling down when you walked off the edge of a table, it would be really useful if someone could explain to you the relationship between the cause and the effect. And for that reason, there's also a set of spiritual laws that might appear to be slightly less obvious at first principle that are put in to assist you. So, for example, some of them are incredibly uncontroversial, like the value of telling the truth. In that context, Baha'is do discourage homosexuality, and it is written in the scriptures that marriage, the concept of marriage only exists between a man and a woman. In that context, however, there are far more writings that talk about the importance of not judging other people. And in that sense, homosexuality is very much a personal consideration. I look at the guidance that exists and I choose to act in a certain way because of it, but I don't believe that gives me any right to judge how anyone else would choose to act, especially if they don't particularly look at that guidance or think it has any special value.
It's a really difficult question to answer, isn't it? As an atheist, I would say what's my opinion of homosexuality is it's a treatment. I don't really have an opinion about it at all. It's a physical fact. It's a simple thing. It is there. Human beings come in with a spectrum of sexualities. When it goes back to looking at other faiths and people's scriptures and things, I feel that a lot of these things were written. The social situations at the time, people tried to put down certain rules for society, and they justified that by bringing faith positions into it, which may or may not be relevant to our society today. I don't believe in the idea of sin as a sort of divine, something that's dictated by a supernatural entity or anything like that. So to me, it's up for society to debate the issues in front of it and what's relevant there and then. So, as a gut instinct of my opinion on it, I don't really have one. I think I was really fascinated. I don't know much about the Sikh faith. I think that was a fantastic, beautiful thing you were saying a minute ago about love and those feelings of things. And for me, you celebrate that. And if you fall in love with someone and you enjoy it, it's a wonderful thing, and you should celebrate it, and whoever that may be.
Thank you. Fantastic. As everyone should know, as I know, that God loves all of His children, and He has a plan for them. So part of that plan is to have a family, and all of us should know we've all been through maturation classes, as we call it in the States, where we learn how little babies come from. And in order to have a family, it needs to come from a man and a woman, and that's why I feel that it's so strongly discouraged in many religious texts. It's because God does know that in order to have a family, it's the place we're going to have the most happiness in this life. There's many different societies that we can belong to that would bring us that sense of family, that sense of belonging. But that's that eternal family that you have here on earth with your parents. Those things last forever. And so that's why God wants you to have them. That's why homosexuality is discouraged. But at the end of the day, God does love all of His children, and He wants them all to attain the greatest happiness.
I guess what I'd add to that is having feelings of homosexuality is what we believe is it's not a sin, having those feelings, but the acting upon those feelings is where I guess the sin would come into. I guess we're all tempted to do things that aren't good. Sometimes we do have temptations in doing something, but it's holding back to those temptations and overcoming them. That's when I guess you're strengthened and stretched and you grow in places. So I guess that's would be our look on it.
I would echo what is it Richard said? Yeah, the atheist position essentially, which is kind of ironic. But, yeah, I don't have an opinion on it. It's I don't really think it's a matter of practices or lifestyle. It's a question of being. As far as Buddhism goes, I'm aware that the Dalai Lama has said things kind of that aren't entirely supportive of homosexuality. And what I would say is that Buddhism is this very kind of diverse worldwide movement now. So the Dalai Lama is speaking, I would say, from a specific cultural viewpoint, so it's very culturally contingent. But the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order, which was the route that I got into this through, that has, there's many gay and lesbians who are actually ordained as Buddhist teachers in there, so it's a very supportive faith from that point of view. For the reason that a lot of monotheistic religions have kind of given gay and lesbian people, for whatever reason, short shrift to a certain extent, or they have been ambivalent about homosexuality in the past. So as far as opinion, again, I find it hard to entertain the idea of having one. But from the kind of corner of Buddhism that I've been involved in, it's been completely fine. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks very much for getting us started with that question. Would anyone else like to ask one?
I just wanted to throw something out a bit more general. If you can, although I know it's very difficult to do so, in 30 seconds or 60 seconds, sum up the main, or what you see as the main, most important parts of your belief or faith.
We can start with me
So
every
anyway,
time.
How long did I have?
Absolutely. You got the hardest questions.
Okay, well, I suppose one of the first things to say is that there is in Buddhism there's no God in the Western Abrahamic sense of the word. So although there is a sense of the divine and there is a sense of a higher plane of reality, there is no God that sits in judgment on human individuals and created the universe as we know it. There is no point of beginning in Buddhism. The only thing that can precede a moment of consciousness is another moment of consciousness. There's a fourfold path. I would go into that in detail, but I don't think I have time. Another central idea is the idea of impermanence, actually, as well. So the idea that everything dies, but as I'm sure probably a lot of you know, there aren't really discussions of afterlife as such. There's the idea of karma, rebirth, and samsara, which is a kind of cycle of lives that go on infinitely. So that's my best attempt at describing it in a nutshell, but I could expand on any one of those things.
The main message that we share as missionaries, this is really why we come out, is that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is Jesus Christ's church restored to the earth. That when Christ was on the earth, he established a church, which had the full teachings that he brought forth. When he died and when his apostles died, a church was withdrawn from the earth. The teachings of Christ was still on the earth, which resulted from a lot of bringing about of churches, of religions, of faiths. We share that after centuries of being lost, the gospel of Jesus Christ was restored to the earth through a prophet of God, that God once again called a prophet, and restored to him truths that were lost, things that were lost, giving him the authority to be a prophet and evidence that he is a prophet. I guess giving each and every one of us something that we can hold in our hands, that we can find out to be true. We can read it, we can look at it, we can study the pages and look at things which are inside and find out if it's really the Word of God. This is the Book of Mormon, which is another testament of Jesus Christ. It's the thing that I guess was brought forward for our own finding out.
I just wanted to add that conversion to the church is an individual process. Every person has to seek on their own. I'm not here because my parents told me to come here, or because my grandpa did, or because someone even came knocked on my door. It's because I wanted to know for myself. So I read the Book of Mormon, and I got down on my knees, and I prayed, and I asked God, is this true? Because if it's true, then it's the most important thing I'll ever know. And I received an answer, and that's what we share, is that anyone in the world can receive that same answer if they ask, if they're sincere in their own heart.
Thank you very much.
In the Old Testament that Christ is going to be the last prophet, or the last.
So, atheism in 30 seconds.
Atheism in 30 seconds. Gosh. Right, well, I can only give you my personal sort of take on it, which is that, as far as I can see, I have a very sort of rational and evidence-based approach to looking at things. As far as I can see, the whole of life, and that includes human life and everything else, is basically a kind of a side effect. And if DNA was a little bit better at replicating itself, none of us would be here. And that's actually an amazingly wonderful thing when you think about it, because it means life is very transient. And I can't think of a better way to spend it really than exploring all these ideas and all these things and enjoying and exploring the world and the universe around us, because it is finite and it's not going to be there forever. And B, trying to make it the best experience you can for yourself and for the other fellow human beings around you. And if you can spend whatever time you've got doing that, and then it comes to an end, I think that's quite wonderful.
Okay, Baha'is believe that there is one God, eternal and self-subsisting, and that all the religions that exist in the world come from that one common source. So we would recognise as messengers and manifestations of God Abraham, Moses, Jesus Christ, the Prophet Muhammad, the Lord Krishna, the Buddha, as well as two prophets that we believe came during the middle of the 19th century from Persia, who brought what is the same eternal message that comes from God age to age. Baha'is believe that humanity has reached very recently, in the past 200 years, a new level of maturity, which you could say was evinced by the fact that, technologically speaking, the globe has got a huge amount smaller over that time period, and that therefore requires new sets of rules, ideas and laws to meet the challenges that come from being able to exist as a single global entity that is humanity. Baha'is believe in a number of basic principles, most fundamentally the individual and independent search for truth. Investigation? What happened there? Sorry. Basically, the idea that it's not reasonable that I believe anything because anybody else tells me so. If I believe it, it has to be because I can understand it and I choose it. And therefore, to believe by any other standard than that is a less than adequate one. It believes in things like the equality of men, the importance of men and women, the importance of a universal language so that we're actually able to communicate to each other, with an ultimate view that believes that the time has come for the world to be united and therefore to be a standard of justice that's universal regardless of where you're born. On an individual level, the faith believes very much in the idea of let deeds, not words, be your adorning, and the belief that the betterment of the world can be accomplished through pure and goodly deeds, and this idea that individual conduct can contribute to it overall to the state of the world that we're living in.
What was the question again? was it summarise the teachings?
Yeah, okay. 30 seconds.
Right, okay. Well, for me, again, equality of humanity. I think the key for me is personal and social responsibility. The gurus are basically saying, improve yourself and consequently improve society. So again, about the whole thing about vices and virtues, you becoming a beacon of virtue will then impact on your fellow human beings and therefore improve society around you. So the whole concept of giving your time, giving your money to society is highly emphasised in the Sikh scriptures. And again, the whole oneness of humanity. It's often sold as a monotheistic religion, but it's more than that. It's actually more of a panentheistic religion, if anyone knows what that means. It's more seeing, panentheism basically says that everything is one, and the force exists outside that as well. So it's more about seeing everything as one, i.e., there's no conversion. We're not actually told to convert because your human being is your brother, your fellow human being is your brother. So the truth is the truth at the end of the day. So it's all about, I think, that, as I say, the emphasis, which answers my first question as well, is all about the vice and virtue. Look at yourself. By looking at yourself, improve yourself, and consequently improve society.
So it would take a very long time to entirely sum up Christianity, but I can try and do a 30-second version. Christianity teaches that human beings were brought into existence by God for the purpose of not simply just to exist, but to exist with God, to exist in relationship with Him, because God is all-loving and He wants to share that love.
Society. Hello, everybody.
Sorry. Yeah, carry on.
So the phrase "God is love" is perhaps quite at the centre of Christianity. But on earth, we have, through our own actions and choices, we've become separated from God, and so Christianity is about being reunited with God, and in so doing, become people who supposed to be, live lives that are the most good and beneficial to us as people. And the way in which we're united to God is through Jesus Christ, and it would take longer to explain everything reasonably why, what the significance of Jesus himself is and why we believe he is who he is. But in short, Jesus Christ we believe was God walking the earth in human form, and that he took upon himself all the sins of the world, or sins people have asked him to repent, and God delivered his judgment upon Jesus, or in fact upon himself, really, to cancel out that sin, all the bad things we do, all the wrongs, so that we can live pure and in so doing be reunited with God. And following on from that, the teachings Jesus taught Jesus gave us teachings how to live, and they're in the New Testament, and give a lot. It's a constant process, I suppose, of learning to be loving, humble, and good and pure, and giving, charitable, so we be more like God and eventually be reunited with him.
Okay. Thank you. We have the next question.
Do you believe in anything of afterlife? What can happen after death? And if you do believe in afterlife, what would qualify you to go there?
Should I start?
Should we start in the middle?
Okay. No, I don't. No, I don't. I think you live your life and you die, and it's a physical process. I don't believe in what you would probably call the spirit or the soul or anything like that. The closest thing I can get to that kind of thing is human consciousness and self-awareness. I don't think that's unique to humans. I think it's an evolved, naturally selected thing. Some animals have it as well. And when you die, it's gone, and then the physical remains will decay back into their constituent atoms and go back into whatever, and be recycled as part of the universe. But I don't think there's any existence for me as a sort of conscious entity after death at all. But in many ways, that's what makes life so valuable.
Okay. Which way are we going now?
Okay. Just to start off, I know there's a lot of uncomfortable people in the back. There's some chairs right there. Don't want to bring them back there, but just a thought. Yes, we do believe in the afterlife. Something that we firmly believe, as our friend over here said that our bodies will decompose and go back into the ground, and it's true. It's not our bodies that are going to go to the afterlife, it's our spirit, our soul. The thing that makes us different than this table, the carbon atoms in this table, the thing that gives us life. And all the knowledge that you've gained, all the relationships that you have, that's what will exist. You are a physical being, and that's part of the reason why we're here.
We also believe that after our spirit goes on, we believe in the resurrection, which is when our spirit and our body will come back. And God is an all-powerful being, so He has the power to bring us back from our earthly remains, I guess, reuniting us, bodies being perfected. And then I guess what makes us, I guess the question that you asked, if there is something, what I guess makes us different from each other, where we're going. We don't believe in just like a heaven or hell, that there is 3 kingdoms of glory. We call them the celestial kingdom, the terrestrial, and the telestial. These are 3 different kingdoms that I guess you can't really separate someone from going here and there. There's not like a line you can draw. You sinned 100 times, so that means you're going to hell. You only sin 99, so you're going to heaven. You can't really do that, and so we show that there's a place for everyone. Being someone who maybe lives a great life, but they didn't have the beliefs in Jesus Christ and didn't live the teachings. They would go to a place that would be meant for them. Things for Jesus Christ, someone who's lived the teachings, would go to somewhere else. And then those that maybe lived a life of sin and crime the whole life would go somewhere else. So that's, I guess, the basic beliefs there. Something that I've been able to, I guess, find out to be true through reading and studying.
I was just wondering if somebody was to be entirely sinful, as you put it, the whole life, but believe in Jesus, where would they go?
I guess I'm not the judge. God sees people's whole lives. He sees who they are, and I guess understands them better than I do. So I can't tell you where they would go. It'd be a thing that we do believe in judgment, where each person will stand before God and be judged according to their acts and desires, and be placed where He feels is right for them.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Like 4 places you could go.
Anyone on this earth right now? Anyone on this earth?
Would it be advantageous to have the same sort of beliefs and lead the same lifestyle as your friends? Because then you wouldn't end up with the people you love.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and that's beautiful thing, is that we do want to live with our families, and God is loving and He's just, and He will, I have full confidence He'll be able to sort it out correctly. But the most important thing to recognize, along with Christianity will back us up, is that all of us sin. Every one of us. I sin, you all sin, everyone sins. Everyone makes mistakes. None of us are perfect. And in order to live with God, we have to be perfect. And so basically that sounds kind of bad. None of us are going to be able to live with God. Well, that's where Jesus Christ comes in. Is that Jesus Christ, He was perfect. And He suffered for our sins. It's a complex principle of what's called the atonement, where He took upon our sins so that we, if we accept Him and live His teachings, then we can live with God. And that's long story short. And so those that do sin, those who make mistakes throughout their life, if they are truly repentant in their own heart and they really want to change and they don't do those things again, that's what's beautiful about it, is that they can still have the opportunity to live with God again.
Why doesn't God just bypass terrestrial life altogether and just place people at the end of the process? Why not sort of create people as they would end up anyway?
I can't tell you why God doesn't do things.
Well, why do you believe He does that then?
Does what?
Well, you have a process living on Earth,
yeah,
and that life results in a person who is either particularly sinful or particularly involved in themselves, or a particularly benevolent person. Why doesn't God just create people that appear to have went through this process anyway and be particularly benevolent, particularly sinful, and just put them wherever they would go? Why not skip the whole gauntlet?
I guess agency is the real question.
Yeah, I guess throughout your whole life you're craving knowledge. You're always learning. Even from a small child till you die, you learn something every day. And the purpose of this life was for us to gain knowledge, gain experience, gain things that would help us to know something we didn't know before, and also to gain what we each have as a body, something we didn't have before this. And I guess that's where the resurrection comes back into. We gain knowledge and we gain our bodies, and at the resurrection, even though we lose our bodies for a little bit of time, we're given it back. And it's something that makes us, I guess we have something.
Can I just add to that? To understand it more completely, we aren't just created. Like, God didn't just create you who you are and you have to follow how you are because you're made that way. Nor did you just evolve and your genes from your parents tell you how to act and your cultural surroundings tell you how to act. But in fact, each of us have our own choice. You can choose whether or not to go to the movies. It's not because of someone else isn't forcing you to. It's your own choice. Everyone has free will. That's why we're here, is to exercise our free will, exercise our own agency, and exercise our own choice. And so God doesn't just create people like that, because that would be against the plan. The plan was that there were 2 plans presented. One plan was that we would come down here, have free choice. Satan presented another plan. His plan was that we'd come down here and be forced to live a certain way, forced to live good, and then we'd all return back. But we, everyone on this earth, chose to have agency. We wanted to be able to use our own mortal body for its rightful purpose. And those that did, we said that we would in the pre-earth life, and we said that we would use it for its rightful intent. And now we have to act by faith rather than by sight, because if you saw God sitting there, it'd be pretty forceful. We wouldn't really have a choice. You'd obviously be a Christian, you obviously follow him. And that's not why we're here. We're here to learn and grow. And it's through the difficult times and through the good times that we grow. I know it's when I've lost loved ones or whatever it may be that I've grown the most. And that's why we're here, is to experience opposition in all things. Sorry.
Okay, so want to keep moving on the line with using the afterlife?
I suppose personally for me, I haven't yet worked it out. I haven't yet worked out the idea of, well, the Buddhist idea of reconciliation, or, I mean, officially Buddhists say that because everything is interconnected, there is no self, there is no discrete sense of I. So although there is this endless kind of cycle of lives that existence goes through, there isn't an integral essence that you can reduce people to that is reborn, so to speak, every single time. But for myself personally, I just believe that human beings, you know, we have an extreme gift in being born human and having the life form that we do, happening to be born in this particular species. But I also believe that we don't know the answer to every single question. So regarding an afterlife, I personally am not going to know until I get there. And until a certain point in my life, I was very much with kind of Professor Dawkins almost on this. You know, I was pretty much convinced that once your body expired, there was nothing else after that. But again, as was just being said, there are certain experiences you go through in life, and for me, it was a friend of mine who actually died very suddenly during my degree. She died of a hypoglycemic attack, and it was going through that experience that really made me question that very kind of rationalist view, and made me think to myself, well, you know, kind of the whole idea of being is so profound that you know, I'm sitting on the fence essentially. So I can answer that question only once certain things happen. So hedging my bets, sorry.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why did that experience change your view? I mean, because for me, I think for you initially, certainly for me, that your view of an afterlife would be a sort of a worldly informed one. You know, you see animals dying, and this would lead you to believing, you know, we're animals and we'd obviously die as well. So I mean, why did, you know, we see dogs die and we see cats die? Why did seeing a human die in particular change? Not change it, but moderated it, you know.
I guess it was moderated because it was around the time that I was getting into this. Actually, it was around the time that I was getting into, you know, studying meditation at the university, and what they actually talk about is sentient beings in a sense. So humans are in that sense that, you know, you have culture, so that's what separates human beings from animals, essentially. But an animal can be reborn as a human can be reborn as an animal, and vice versa, if you're prepared to go down that route and entertain it. So it's a bit of both, really. I think rationally, you can kind of there's a part of me that it's, you know, entertains the idea that, well, this idea of heaven and hell and purgatory, these are kind of conceits that let us off the hook almost. Like, oh, if we're good, I don't have to face the reality of my mortality, and there's something that, you know, allows me to just carry on regardless and not really fear death and not really fear dying. Yeah, I don't know. It was something very big and very profound that happened at the time that made me think, well, I suppose it's answering that question: why do bad things happen to good people? So quite possibly death is final, and, you know, if you're unlucky enough to go early, then you know, depending on your viewpoint, you do go straight to that other place. But there was actually a great statement at this girls' memorial service, which was someone saying, you know, I don't know where she is, and I don't know if she's anywhere at all. So I think, again, it's that kind of passionate recognition of not knowing, really, that kicked in for me. It wasn't really a sense of coming down on one side or the other.
Radical agnosticism.
Perhaps, yeah.
Respond?
Yeah, certainly.
I think that's really interesting because, and again, from the atheist point of view, a few years ago I had an experience where I went through a very, very bad time, and I was in very dire straits at one point, and had this feeling of absolute desperation. What earth am I going to do to sort my life out? Because I was in a pretty bad way. And I had this feeling, I remember one, it was very clear, this feeling of desperation and literally wanting anyone to take this burden that I had imposed on myself to a large extent, to take it away from me, and just the feeling of, God, if someone could just take this off me, and the feeling of relief that if that could only be possible, and it only lasted a few seconds, but it was there. And I wonder whether that's what sometimes people describe when they have, religious conversion. It's just the hope. And human beings, I think, have this amazing thing that's a behaviour we've evolved, is that we have hope, and we are able to hope for better times. And when you're in dire straits, you have that something to keep you going, which is that you hope things will get better. And I realised at that moment that the only thing that was going to get me out of the hole that I'd got myself into was not faith, and it wasn't God. It was me, and it was bloody hard work, and it was me who had to do it. So that's what I've done, and tried to repair the bits of my life that were going wrong. And really, I think that's where we're all doing, because all the religions we talked about tonight have this wonderful ethos in them of hope, and I think faith grows from that, but I think it's an irrational growth from hope. I think hope is amazing and valuable, but faith is the blind alley that's become attached to it. All these things sound really absolutely wonderful, and it would be great if a lot of them were true, but wanting them to be true doesn't make them true. And so I would that would be my take on that experience that you had.
That's wonderful. Isn't that so great? Can someone please take this burden away from me?
But who took the burden away? I did. God didn't. I did.
Christian?
Oh, hello. Can Jazz have a turn to speak, because he's been so good and he's been sitting on his hands for the past 10 minutes.
No, you go first.
No, that's you, really, please.
Are you sure? Oh no, I'm on the spot now. Okay. From a Sikh perspective, the Gurus say that heaven and hell are states of mind, for starters, so you don't go to them once you die. Talk about the concepts of dying whilst you're alive, and that doesn't mean physically, it actually talks about your ego, eradicating your ego whilst you're alive. And again, it's all this thing about separation of yourself from the rest of the oneness. What else did I write down? Yes. I once heard a Sikh, he was talking about Guru Nanak's teachings, and said, anyone who tells you what happens after you die is either mad or a liar. And he's basically saying that, the Gurus emphasise the importance of the life you're leading now, because you're here now. And again, the whole thing, I'll just say the same thing again and again. I'm going to say virtues in every single answer. So that is the key aspect that the Gurus talk about. Okay.
Okay. The original question was, do I believe in an afterlife? Yes, in the conventional sense of the word, I do, although I wouldn't call it an afterlife, in as much as if you talk about the afterlife being eternal, then really this is almost a pre-life. But I'll talk about that in a moment. Ultimately, God created us to be with Him, and on this earth we are existing now in a state of sort of partially with Him. God's presence is here on the earth, but some people move away from Him, some people move towards Him. And ultimately, we all have the choice to follow God's words and live the life He wants for us, the best life for us, or we can turn away from that and do our own thing. But ultimately, no matter what you do in your life, nothing you can ever do, no amount of good deeds can ever make you perfect enough to be with God. And that's, I think, why Christianity is different perhaps than some other religions that talk about doing good deeds. But we can never earn a way into that state of that afterlife. We can't. It's only through Jesus Christ, who made Himself a sacrifice in our place. Ultimately, our souls, we believe, will either be reunited with God or separated completely. If we're in a state of half and half, you might say now. Ultimately, we'll be reunited fully with God or separated. And in a way, it's a self-taken choice. You have a choice now where you're going to end up. Do we want to go be separated from God or with God? The labels heaven and hell are often used in association with Christianity. The Bible doesn't necessarily talk about being united with God in heaven, but rather a restored earth, a new earth. That's all in Revelation. But I'll say heaven for easiness' sake. I suppose we'd all be sent to hell if we were left on our own power. Anyone here, no matter how good we were. But through Jesus Christ we can become pure and be united with God. And the brilliant thing is that God loves us so much that He said, I know it's hard for you. I know you can't ever be good enough for me, so what I'm going to do is bring myself down to earth. I'm going to humble myself and say, I take all the blame. I take it upon myself. And so God Himself became the sacrifice because we could never achieve His standard. Yeah, His love, His need to be with us is so great. His complete love for us led Him to be sacrificed in our place. Because that's how much He wants to be with us. And it's ultimately if we choose to believe in Jesus Christ, believe in His sacrifice, believe that God has made that choice for us, ultimately we'll be reunited with Him in heaven. Or if we choose to turn away from God, ignore Him, to say, you've made your choice, it's your choice, you'll be separated from Him.
You said that we can never be wisdom to be perfect or to be whatever concept of being to be with God. Why didn't God just forgo all of this, Jesus atonement salvation thing and just make people or give people the ability to be that good, to be of themselves, to be godlike?
Yeah, it's a very important, very good, relevant question. It's one that would first sprang to my mind when I was becoming a Christian. I suppose if we were created to be good and pure, and that was all we could ever do, all we ever did was love God and worship God. Yes, please.
Goodness in the scale. You're simply limiting a scale here. You can be 100% and you can be 0%. You seem to have a concept of perfection as there is no 100%. Only God provides 100%. I don't see why we cannot have this 100% built in.
Right.
So what you're saying is,
I'd like to answer.
I can bring that clear. Atonement and salvation essentially provide a bridge to this 100%, to this perfection. I'm saying, well, why not just have this bridge within us? Why not have a scale within us? Why not have? I don't think we need to. You can still allow choice by providing 100%. No limited choice.
I just wanted to.
I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I'm just throwing in and then throwing back. I'm not. It's that partly because my background's electronic engineering, and so when you start using numbers, I go, aha! I know what's going on. And part of it is that I don't think that the concept of 100%, in my understanding, is particularly valid, because I believe perfection is infinite. And so I think that that's kind of what I wanted to throw in, was that there isn't a limit. There's always more, because that's the nature of infinity.
You're an electrical engineer, are you? Did you do electrical engineering?
That's what my master's degree was in, yeah.
Physicists and engineers define things to be from 0 to infinity in a number of ways. You have a quantity which can be 0, a quantity which can be infinite. Potentially is one thing, but there's still a value you can give out infinity of these things. There's still, if you talk about differentiation and integration, there's still a value at this point. That's a very abstract and irrelevant thing to say about religion or happiness, but what I'm saying is that God obviously has some concept of what is required to be with Him. And saying that concept contains infinity is not something I think is irrelevant. I think, why not make human beings possible? Why not make it for human beings possible to achieve these infinities? Because the infinity is a value. in these terms, I mean, there's still a point which is infinite, even if abstract. Why not allow things to traverse the road to infinity?
Okay, well, I'll do my best to answer. Perhaps we'll have to talk about this separately later, but I'll say it for everyone's benefit. I don't believe that in Christianity there's such a thing as a scale of 0 to 100. It is a matter of its perfection or imperfection. It's not numerical. If God's standard is perfect, and you do. The Bible says, I can't remember the exact quote, but all have fallen short of the grace of God, or of God's standard. If in God's ultimate judgment, how does this person's done, said this many lies and this many bad things, this person's killed someone, this person's maybe killed a lot of people, this person's a thief, how could God say, okay, we're going to let, if you've said this many lies, you're going to go to hell, but if you just say this many, then you can go to heaven. You know, it's not like rocking over a balancing scale, 50% you're in, or under 50% you're out. It's perfection or nothing. But the wonderful thing is about God is He's given us a free gift of perfection, that we don't have to earn it, it's just there. We just accept it. Because He's made that sacrifice Himself, that golden standard. You know, so.
I think it might help if I add, you sort of said, why aren't humans able to obtain 100% perfection? You might say that. And I think, well, actually, that's the great hope that Christians do have, is that they look at Jesus, and Jesus was fully man, yet He was without any sin. The Bible says that He lived a perfect life. He did obtain that perfection Himself. And that is why, when He died on the cross, His sacrifice is able to take away our sins, because He lived perfect life.
Thank you. That was a very nice, very helpful. Quiet a second. That was a very helpful contribution. But can we raise our hands before we start? Sorry, I'm not doing a very good job of keeping order here. Yes.
Just a comment on that. These stories about God making things which are perfect, and the question relates to, why doesn't they make everything perfect from the start, like themselves, the perfect universe?
That's a great. Perhaps we can follow that one along.
The story.
Well, can I just say something? I think the
yes, if you like.
The moment before that question was really very good. One of the best I've heard, actually. I said God allows us to obtain our knowledge now and experiences ourselves.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll get any other answer from a religious person.
Yeah, I'd say that the question's already answered. But
I've heard, I think it's Christian faith, but I'm not sure. Is that God knows everything that has happened and everything that will happen? So what's the point in putting you on earth to decide whether you're going to go to heaven or not? He knows what you're going to do anyway. He knows.
Would anyone in particular like to?
She never got to answer the afterlife, though.
No.
I'm not sure which way, like, we appear to be following a many diverging paths.
Yeah.
Which one would you like to follow? Because I'm happy to go with the conversation, I'm happy to answer the original question.
Well, if you'd like to answer the afterlife question, then I'll answer some more on that, and then we'll come back to this question.
Okay. Right. Baha'is believe that there are 5 levels of creation that we can experience, like in this earthly life, if we can let that as a concept. So the most basic level is mineral, like water, rocks, that kind of thing. Minerals are reasonably well understood by chemists, I believe. Then you get into the world of the plant. Now, plants display all of the qualities that are displayed by minerals, but they display additional qualities that are not displayed by minerals. So you've got a hierarchy system emerging. Go for it.
I was trying to ask you, Elizabeth, what those similarities are.
Similarities.
What could you give an example of what plants and minerals are?
For example, they share properties like if I push them, they would move.
Okay.
For example, and that would be true of everything, because if you think the mineral is the most basic level, if the mineral does it, all the higher hierarchies will. So then you've got things that plants do that minerals don't. For example, they grow and they reproduce. And then the next level up from plants is animals. So far, we're all relatively on a key, and animals can do everything that plants can do, but they can also do things and they have qualities that plants don't have. And the next level up from that, I believe, is human beings, and the distinguishing feature between human beings and the rest of animal creation depends on who you talk to. If you read Aristotle, he says it's reason. Ollie talked earlier about culture. For Baha'is, it's the idea of having a soul, that human beings are unique among this world of creation in that they have a soul. And so in terms of the afterlife, I completely agree with what we've all said, in that, you know, the body disintegrates, it is atoms, it returns and separates, and possibly becomes parts of other people's bodies. But that the soul is something that's eternal, and that's what continues to exist, and also that the soul is what makes you you. It's the bits about, and if you happen to love somebody, those are the things that you love. It's not really so much the body that you can touch, which is good because it changes. It's those eternal things, and that's what I believe the soul is, and I believe that that's what the afterlife is. To go into slightly further detail, I believe that there is a concept, like, I think heaven and hell are perhaps like ends of a spectrum, and I believe that heaven is nearness to God, or if you prefer perfection, this idea of that infinity of goodness that we were talking about a little while ago. And I believe that hell is merely the distance you are from that, because if you love something, you would want to be near it, and so to be far from something that you love is hell. And I believe that the purpose of this world, someone mentioned about the idea of qualifications for the afterlife. I believe the only qualification you need to get, like, you will have, if you have a soul, it will continue to exist when you die. But that the purpose of this life, as much as the purpose of the existence of a child in its mother's womb, is that it grows arms and legs and eyes that it can have no use for in the womb, but it grows them because when it enters this existence, it has a use for them that was unperceivable at the time. And I believe that the qualities that we're called upon to grow are effectively, if you will, spiritual limbs. They're the qualities that will be of service to us in the future, and that's what the purpose of this part of our existence is.
Thank you. Our next question was on, well, sorry, I've already taken one, was the free will coexisting with a God who foresees all actions. That's roughly what we're asking about.
If God sees everything, why? That was wonderful, because that's very much along the lines of what we believe as well. It's not the fact of whether or not God knows. God does know everything. He does know the choices you're going to make. If I could give a personal example real quick, and without going into too much detail, I lost a loved one, right? And so through this experience, I grew a lot, and I learned a lot of things about what I value in life and what's important to me and things like that. So without getting into too much detail about it, basically, God knew how I was going to act through it. It wasn't God that needed to know. It was me that needed to know. And growing through that experience, I recognized that at the time I thought it was the most difficult thing that could ever happen to me, that I couldn't get through it, that I would never be able to do it. But now I'm here. I got through it. I'm living. Now I know that I can do more than that I can go through more than that I can experience more than that. So it's not about God learning more from our decisions. It's about us learning more, about us growing, finding out what we're capable of.
Okay.
Going back to what you said about the Bible.
Well, I was going to say at the back, because someone's had their hand a bit longer.
Sorry. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, it comes to the question as an atheist. So tonight I think we came and heard a very diverse amount of beliefs, and even more diverse amounts of concrete accounts of what gives us meaning, this, that, and the other. What I really wanted to know was the evidence that gives rise to these beliefs, because otherwise they're just feel-good, fuzzy feelings, and why they're so geocentric and anthropocentric, given the vast variety of things that exist in the universe.
Could you just explain those two terms, please?
Yes. So most of them involve Earth, which is one of trillions of planets in the universe, and anthropocentric involves humans, whereas there's life. And why they seem to fulfill our human natural desire for feeling and purpose
and our fear of death.
That's what religions do. That's what religions are for.
You can have a determinism without religion, without the supernatural.
No, I'm not having a go. I'm just saying that the whole thing about death is because human beings are scared of it, aren't they? Really? But anyway, go on. Which way do you want to?
Well, if anyone would like to respond to that first.
And when I said evidence, I didn't just mean I read a book and it said there's many books. Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
So what was the question? Just the evidence that
you have, seeing that there's so many different accounts of concrete rises that give your vaguely quite similar ideas about love and this purpose that seem to fulfill our human needs.
I think he's asking why you're Mormon as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, good question. Is it okay if I start? Mind? Okay. Yeah, we're probably talking too much. I'm sorry. I just love to talk. But I guess going back to what I was talking about earlier, Justice Smith, he was the prophet that God called to restore these truths. He provided with Justice Smith evidence that I guess would make it true that he did see this. Sorry.
Well, it's just there's all these. You make concrete claims like God and this, that, and the other without giving evidence for them.
Yeah. I'm getting there. Yeah. Sorry. Joseph Smith was given a, I guess, you said not book, but he was given this record of Scripture. It wasn't, we didn't have beforehand. It was given 1827 was when we received it. The whole world received it. And this is just a book. It is just writings within a couple pages. But the fact of the matter is that I guess we invite people to read it, to find out if it's true, the things that are taught inside. But the most important thing that we teach, which is the evidence to our beliefs, is that we invite people to read it and then pray and ask God if it's true. I guess from finding out that this is true, you come out with three major things. That Joseph Smith was a prophet, that God restored his truth through Joseph Smith, that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and also the Church of Jesus Christ, the Latter-day Saints, is the Lord's kingdom once again established on the earth. And the reason I'm a member of this church is because I've done that. I've read it, and I've prayed about it, and received the personal witness that it is true. And it's something that I cannot deny because God has answered my prayer. And it's something I won't deny because I know that I know it and God knows it. So.
Sorry, go ahead.
Unless you can add something if you like, but I was going to open it up to
No, you can open it up, that's great.
So that's one source of offers evidence is through prayer. So anyone else like to contribute a different form of evidence they have for their beliefs?
I would like to say on the subject of evidence, I think there's a lot of different evidences, and it will take quite a long time to talk through them all. But certainly historic, the one branch, say general philosophical understanding and a more general belief in God to do with the facts of existence rather than non-existence of reality. But above all else, I think a lot of things can point you to God, but you'll never know until you, to use a cliche expression, used to take a leap of faith to. I became a Christian based upon what I saw as I do law, so use a legal phrase, the balance probability way towards it, as I saw it at the time, and subsequently that's been like confirmed, and that's quite personal. I don't know if I can always share it with the room, so you'll have to take my word on it. But I think most Christians you talk to say that it became real for them in a much more tangible way than previously. Some people grow up believing in God, believing in Christian God, but there becomes a point where suddenly there's a change in a knowledge and understanding and intimacy with God, and that's when it becomes a matter of knowledge rather than belief. But I would love to talk through some of the evidences with you if you'd like to have a discussion later, if you're really interested. Because it's certainly very interesting to discuss, but it would take a long time to talk about it.
I think we had a response there.
I'm not sure how relevant it is to mention. Well, it's sort of relevant. So the vast majority of Christians that I meet that aren't specifically Christian, that isn't why I'm meeting them, they're just happen to be Christian. They don't really. There's a nebulous idea of God, and a very sort of, a sort of a feel good, be good, and things will turn out okay. Yeah. Is it right to call these people Christians? I mean, is it right to? I'm just asking if is it right to call people Christians? I mean, people describe themselves all sorts of terms. I mean, I could say, well, I was a neo-Nazi or whatever, but it doesn't mean me a neo-Nazi. Is it right to describe people as Christians? Is it right to describe people as Mormons if they believe there's never a idea?
Okay, well, I think the term Christian was not a word Jesus himself used. Originally, the terminology people would use for someone who followed Jesus Christ would be a believer, a follower of Christ. The original word Christian sort of arose later, and it was actually, I think it was originally a word non-Christians used to describe Christians, little Christs, something like followers of Christ. A label, and like you said, a label is a label. Someone can call themselves whatever they are. If someone's a capitalist, it says they're a capitalist, but they're actually a communist. What are they really? There's a that's a law. There's a judgment. Like a judge says, if someone creates a tool for digging with 3 prongs and calls it a spade, well, it's actually a fork. It doesn't really matter what he calls it. Is it right to call someone a Christian if they don't necessarily hold on to a particular belief? I think someone can call themselves whatever they want, but ultimately, salvation in Christ is always going to be linked to the Bible and the teachings. So, say someone who accepts what's in the Bible and believes that's true, and put that into practice in their life, that's someone I would call them a Christian. But it's always just a label. People call themselves Christian from a traditional point of view. Often they don't necessarily have strong conviction of God, or go to church or pray. It's more traditional. I think. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Can I go back to the whole proof thing?
Oh yes.
Cool. Right. I think that if we're looking at proofs, my understanding is that we're likely to be using the term that goes, if we are rational human beings, are there a rational set of ideas that we can bring together that would act as an understanding that any other rational person could understand that would lead to a certain conclusion, whether that was a belief or an idea. Now, coming from a vaguely scientific background, I would suggest that there are 2 concepts that are being employed here. One is, could we abstractly deduct from a set of universal principles right here and right now any single universal truth? And lots of philosophers throughout history have tried to do this, whether this is belief in God, and so you can go down the whole design theory route, or the belief that there must have been a creator, which, some people would look at and go, yes, I look at that and I see that to be a rational set of principles that I can agree with, and some would say, I look at that and see that a rational set of principles, but nonetheless, I don't see how that deduces, I don't link that back. So that's one set of proofs that could exist that we could discuss in great detail, because I feel this is a vast topic. The second set of proofs that I believe that I've experienced, and what we've more been discussing right now, is what I would describe as experiential proofs. So let us take a hypothesis. There is a God, for example, or maybe one that's more specific would be useful, is that it is wrong to lie. So I will work on the principle that I should tell the truth. For 1 week I will not tell a lie. I will observe the outcome of whether or not I felt that was an improvement on the situation I was in before, and I will be in a better circumstance to understand whether this is a useful hypothesis. And that seems to be more what we've been discussing this evening, is that fact that people go, I looked at something, I prayed at it and I viewed the outcome, or I went in something and I examined what I thought the fruits of it were, and it led me to a certain conclusion as to its validity.
Are you saying that you're going out and empirically testing for your experience, or are you just saying you try something and then if you think it feels nice, then you accept it? Which one? Because you just kind of gave an account which was, oh, you try it out and you think it's good, but then it turns out, which I think replaces the tendency to weaken.
I'm sorry, I really didn't. I didn't understand.
Are you talking about the empirical? Because God is something that's pretty a big claim.
Sure.
Something that's far more hard than, say, that chair. That chair is something that's well within the realm of experience.
Yes.
This divine otherworldliness, which conveniently not seen, is something that's probably would require much more.
Sure, and I don't think you'd find anyone here who would argue that ultimately at some point if you choose to believe in God, that's where belief comes in. But I think that what you can do is go, if I have a friend, if I have a friend and the friend tells me something, and so say I meet somebody, that's a better example, and they tell me something, if this is somebody I've never met before and I know nothing about, I am going to place a certain amount of value on that information as being true. And it will be proportional to whether or not I think that they might have any, whether or not if I'm asking them what time the bus goes and they're stood by the bus stop, I'll probably value their information more highly than if I ask them to explain some complicated mathematical formula and I've got no idea of their background. If it turns out that that information is true, and when I continue to test this individual, and this is the best approach I believe we can make towards empirical understanding of religion, if we continue to test that if we continue to test that individual and we find that the statements that they are making that we can test are true, I believe it to be increasingly reasonable to believe that those statements which we cannot test, and I would suggest that testing the belief of the existence of God is outside my capacity, I would tend to believe that this was likely to be true based on the things that I can test and work on from an empirical basis.
One thing I tried to say when I was talking about geocentric and anthropocentric is that I think, if you look at it rationally, in terms of just the person walking up saying, I just saw a mouse and it's as big as a house. It's something, you're not going to go, are you a sane person? And you go investigate him. And if you find out it's a sane person, I still wouldn't take his idea that they saw a mouse as big as a house. Because I've seen mice always about relatively an inch long and no bigger. So it's the size of the claim of it and why it's so centered on us.
But surely all you've just said is that I hear claims that I don't wish to investigate, which I think's fine.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
What I was saying is that claims, since we all have sense experience from past of our lives, things that are very, very contradictory or very grand compared to that need much, much more validation, and according to how much, much more grand they are.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying.
I agree. There are probably lots of other people that want to speak as well.
Well, I want to defend something you said. I'm attacking it in some way. I think what he was saying about requiring much more evidence is a little dubious. I think the mouse example was a little dubious as well, because we have experience with mice, and we don't have experience with gods, so we can't say one way or another. But the process you were using and describing in a very pseudo-empirical terms, I'd call them, you were making value-based judgments in a evidence-based way. I mean, these are still value-based judgments. These are ethical judgments. I mean, you talk about lying. Just lying improve my life. Well, it may do, but I mean, if you have a life where lying didn't improve it, such as in economics or finance or politics, then is lying therefore a true thing for a politician and a false thing for a priest? I mean, these are value-based judgments which do not have existence in the world. They're just abstract ideas. Whereas God does have an existence in the world, and we can't make value-based judgments of the priests of our religion. Yeah.
Just real quick.
Just quickly.
All human beings do have like an inherent understanding of what is good and what is evil. It's like scientific, proven. So that's a good basis for it. Good and evil.
Can you give us a reference?
A reference.
Yeah, you say we have an intrinsic knowledge of good or bad. Can you give me the scientific literature? Can you give me the papers?
You can Google it. Just share.
I can Google is there a God? And probably I'll get half on the website so about it.
Pat Church and Patricia Church from the UC California will.
You got a comment right from the back?
I don't know much about the Adventist religion and stuff like religion. But I think being a human being on the earth and looking into just anything at all, the likelihood is, I will find something centered around human beings on the earth around here. I don't know anything about other galaxies, so I'm not sure unless I find out and see that.
That was Okay.
I'm just sort of thinking, listening to everybody talk, it's quite interesting how, although there are differences, I say there's more similarities in the way everybody's thinking and between the religions, especially between some of them, than there are differences. And I would say, I mean, to me, from my perspective as an atheist, what I would call sort of consciousness, or my consciousness, my ability to think around things that perhaps another animal might not do. You might call your soul or your spirit, or what I might see as, I might call what you might call sinning, and the consequences of sinning. I would call, if I go around lying to all my friends, they're all going to be mean to me, and therefore I'll get the fever, or I'll suffer the consequences of that. And I just think it's quite nice almost that there is quite a lot of similarities and a lot of everybody seems to agree on more than they disagree on. And I guess what they disagree on are probably the fundamental things, which is what causes problems. But I think you should be careful just to suggest things and not overlook the fact that as human beings we all do believe in morality and believe in other people and the rights of other people, and in our own right to believe in what we want and to go about it in our own ways. And I think that's quite
I think, again, as the atheists on the panel, I agree with that, and I think we would probably all disagree with where morality comes from, or our own tweaks on morality, and some people, I guess, they would argue for an absolute morality, good and bad, this is right, this is wrong. I would argue for a more sort of relative approach, depending on the society you're in and the challenges it's facing. And I think morality is a human construct, and it's a spectrum, and it's something that we develop and explore and can change with time.
Would anyone else on the panel like to respond to similarities?
I had a question to kind of throw either to the room or to the panel, which is that I look at one of the questions I find myself pondering over my shreddies in the morning is how do we live in this world successfully where we accept, like, I'm completely happy to accept that there are lots of things in the room that we could probably all agree on if we wanted to write a big long list about things that we believe to be right ways or wrong ways to live, but I'm also aware that we could come up with a list equally as long as things that we disagree with. I think that's fine. I think it's great that human beings are different. How do we live in a world where we're all different? Because obviously there have been times throughout the entirety of history when there have been tensions between different peoples, partly because of those differences. And so, like, the question I'd be intrigued to see what people have got answers towards is, how do we live in a world where we get to celebrate and enjoy those differences rather than come into conflict as a result of them?
Well, it depends, I would say, on what those differences are. If you've got fundamental differences between one person or one group's morality and another, then you're in trouble, aren't you? And that's where you get conflict coming from some of the time. If it's just the differences between what you like watching on TV and what I like watching on TV, we can probably come to some kind of happy compromise. So, I can use the video or something. So, how do we have a happy society? I guess is what we've been struggling with since we first became self-aware, and we will probably go on struggling with it. And religion is what I believe was a sort of more primitive societies. I think that's where it comes from, as a way of trying to answer those questions. And once you try and answer those questions, there will always be the individuals in this group who say, well, why should I follow that rule? And so you have to have some kind of authority behind it. And I think that's where religion came from in the first place. It's trying to say, oh, well, God said you can't question it because this supernatural entity says it, and you can't question it. And it was a way before, it was a more primitive way of trying to have, I suppose, law and order, and it became a bit distorted along the way as things do.
Are you asking hypothetically in terms of how would we be able to live in a society where we all believe something different, or currently we obviously all coexist in the society, and how is that possible? Just trying to get.
I'm just aware that, I'm aware that bad news sells newspapers, and that therefore what you get in the news isn't necessarily representative. But I can name instances in the last 5 years, as I'm sure can the majority of people in the room, where there were tensions that erupted into some sort of demonstration or some sort of violence, where the system appeared to break down. So kind of the question I'm asking is, working from the system we've got to a system that would avoid those circumstances. Yeah. So what would we need to do differently, or change, or add, or remove that would allow us to live without those points of friction?
I've got a comment on that. I think it could probably open to opinion. But surely an answer to that is secularism, where no religion is given any privilege.
Well, firstly, quite a few people have comments, so I'll point to them.
How can we celebrate difference?
Can I say, there's one thing that I would do, that I suppose specifically I would do towards that, which is remove religion from schools and let people grow up and make up their own mind and not indoctrinate them as children. And get children from different cultures and different backgrounds all mixing together in the melting pot. It's working in certain areas of Northern Ireland, things like that, and that's what I would do.
Okay. Question.
Just on Richard's previous point, do you guys think that now and historically religion's been used to control and manipulate people in society, in certain nefarious ways, like a recent example being George Bush?
Right?
Go ahead, you take it. Take it away.
It's a direct answer. I would say absolutely yes. Religion is used all the time by lots of people to do awful things. That does not, however, mean that God does not exist, nor does it mean that God wants those things to happen. I believe that you talk about George Bush, you talk about a sort of, are you referring to war or...
Just stab at the Americans.
George Bush. We're not have time to get registered, we're running a little low on time.
I mean, Tony Blair said that he became a Catholic, I guess he had a lot to repent. And he said God told him he should invade Iraq. So I mean,
I'm not sure that it is, but I've never been told by God to invade a foreign country.
Maybe it was an off day.
I mean,
I think what I say is that I think if you go right down to the core of Jesus' teachings, Jesus Christ's teachings, there's nothing in there about going and waging war or about controlling people through religion. Jesus said, live in society. And instead respect governments that you live under. My personal view is that Christians shouldn't engage in heavy politics to try and impose morality.
Sorry, Harry, I'm running a little short on.
Right. Sorry. But I think some people do use it as an instrument of power for their own individual ends, but that's certainly not something that Jesus ever advocated.
It's definitely misused with that.
That's a big point.
Yeah.
Just very quick.
Going back to the feudal system, which is where a lot of these monotheistic religions came from, that era, isn't that just like the perfect way to put together that kind of society? Like, God created some people lords and some people serfs, and this is why we should get trodden by people above us, by this different class.
Well,
that's the way God made it.
Christianity grew up in...
Isn't that the whole clue that just held that kind of archaic society together?
If you understand...
that point's already been answered, really, that it's a possible misuse of religions to oppress people, but that doesn't necessarily reflect on its truth.
Its original use.
I would say certainly not in Christianity. If you read the text, it's certainly not advocating a governmental structure or a patriarchism or anything like that.
Has anyone else got a very different response from that? How not can be misused? Okay, just a couple more points.
Well, there was a comment recently on the Aristotelian concept called eudaimonia, which is human flourishing. You might be aware of that. And the very speakers from Harry's Park, Patricia Churchland, and some very eminent neuroscientists and philosophers said, in contrary to what Richard said, and I was putting up on that, but I didn't have time, that there are intrinsic values within humans that are good for us and some that are bad for us. So we can say objectively whether or not there are good things and whether or not there are bad things. So I think to reduce morality to a trivial, cultural relative thing would be to say that no one can be wrong, and I think that would be a false because there are things which are good for us and we can theoretically determine what those are.
We might have to have a chat about that. I think we'll call it trivial, and I don't think I use that word. But,
the philosophers call it trivial semantic relativism. We've got the trivial moral.
Yeah. something was brought up is I never actually got to the atheist on the question about evidence.
Yeah, I wanted to answer this because I think the original question was, what evidence have you for your belief? And it's quite a difficult question when I don't have a belief. So I was going to just say two things about evidence in general. One, the philosopher Bertrand Russell many years ago said that I can't disprove that there's a flying teapot circling the solar system. I can't prove it's not there in the same way I can't prove God is in there. But because I can't prove it doesn't mean it's there. Because if you follow that line of reasoning, you end up believing the fairies at the bottom of the garden and all the rest of it. So you find yourself in the realms of fiction that you can never disprove. So that was the first thing. And the second thing was that because of that, I suppose the way I look at the world has to go back to rational thought and the scientific method and all the rest of it. And the beauty of that is that the way the scientific world works is that you have some evidence and it isn't subjective. You throw it out to your scientific peers and the general public and they can critique it. I sat in a lecture someone gave today presenting some research and a conclusion they'd reached as part of a master's degree, and I sat there and pulled it apart. I thought it was a dreadful piece of research, and I was free to say so and to critique it and say why it was flawed at the time. And when you talk about these subjective experiences of people, well, I know God because I've experienced it, you can't do that. That's the flaw. That is the fundamental flaw in the faith position, is that it is not open to challenge, it is not open to repetition, it is not open to proving to people it's true. And at the end of the day, in the physical world, something is either true or it isn't true. And if it is true, it's there, it can be measured, it can be observed, it can be seen.
I think that might be where we have to wrap up. We've got time for a couple more questions? Or?
We can do one more. Can I suggest that? Well, I just wanted to say that if you could prove that God was there, again, it would take away your agency. You wouldn't be able to choose right from wrong. So, but that's why we can't prove it. But I would just like to request, if it be possible, we haven't heard a lot from either of you, or from like the girl with the hat in the back. I was wondering if the final question to the whole panel could be from one of you.
Anyone who hasn't spoken yet?
Yeah, anyone that hasn't spoken yet.
She's very shy.
If you have any questions.
Do you have a question for anyone else who's spoken?
What does your faithful belief say about the relationship between humans and non-human animals and how we should treat them? I guess I'll do that quickly.
No shit.
Just very briefly go from Shrek.
Pretty simply, do you think humans are better than all other animals? Do you think it's okay for humans to eat other animals? That's what I want to know.
Oh, okay.
Just very briefly.
We start on this end.
Yeah.
Could we throw there is like just too much, do you think?
Say that again,
Do you
sorry.
throw evolution in, or do you think that's too
Evolution?
much?
Okay, well, evolution I'm fine with.
Should have asked at the start.
So is the question, is it okay to eat animals? Was that the question?
Well, what does your faithful belief say about
States of human beings. Yeah.
would your faithful belief say that non-human animals are equal to humans, or humans are better than non-human animals? And is it justifiable to eat non-human animals?
Okay.
Does it not have an opinion?
Okay. The official opinion is that all sentient beings deserve compassion, mutual respect. You can slightly tease that out by saying that there's this idea that human beings being born with a human body by chance have access to certain insights that animals don't have. So you could call that culture, you could call that reason, whatever it is you want to call it. So in that sense, humans are separate from animals. One of the 5 precepts is not taking life. So again, I'm going to try my best, but you can interpret that if you want to as vegetarianism. A lot of Buddhists do. A lot of Buddhists aren't comfortable with the idea of actually participating in an industry that involves the taking of life, for the reason that it mirrors that very central ethical principle. For myself, I still eat meat. I know a lot of Buddhists that do eat meat. Why do I do it? It's something that I've gone through and tried to rationalise, and I suppose ultimately I eat it because I like the taste. But as far as evolution goes, I suppose this is where evolution does come in. I eat it as part of a balanced diet, and the way I reconcile it in my own head is that no harm should come to animals. That's a given, I think. But as long as I understand that fillet or burger or whatever it is that's put in front of me, that animal did not die for me, and it's actually an opportunity to bring awareness to how interconnected life is and how dependent other life forms are on human beings and so on. So again, it's a very ambivalent position, but it's something that I think is for the individual to negotiate ultimately.
Thanks very much.
We're not vegetarians, but we do believe in, I guess, that the animals have been given us for our use, so we should, I guess, use them sparingly. I don't want to put it in that sense that it's just like a plant or something, but that we should respect them. They are living creatures, and they are God's creation. But they are given to us for our nourishment, for us to grow. But it's not to be used like, I guess, every meal. To use sparingly. That's what we believe in.
Thank you.
Well, I do eat meat. Can I justify that? I eat meat because I enjoy it, but I'm well aware that it's perfectly feasible to eat a perfectly well balanced diet without doing so. I think my position would probably be that I can't be that strongly against eating animals, otherwise I wouldn't do it. But I don't think animals should suffer in any way. And if we're going to farm animals and whatever, it should be in a way. It is hard because where do you draw the line? When is an animal conscious, and when can it suffer and things like that? Where do you draw that line? So it's difficult. So I think we should make an effort not to do anything that would cause pain or suffering. Is taking an animal's life in itself cruel? In some cases, probably, but I think maybe we reflect that in the animals that we choose to eat. I don't know many people who eat chimpanzee or anything, and it's probably because they feel very uncomfortable with that, because they're more closely related to us. So I don't really have a definite answer to that question. Maybe I need to think about it a bit more.
I believe that we're human beings are stewards of the earth. I think we're both stewards, if you believe in God, towards God because it's God's creation, but I also think we're stewards to future generations. Like, the earth is the gift that we will hand to our children, and truth be told, I don't think we're making a particularly good job of looking after it at the minute. I do eat meat. I'm really impressed. When I got married, my husband really didn't know what a vegetable was. We've made it as far as salad now. The Baha'i writings do suggest that in the future our diet will primarily come from grains, nuts and fruits, is what's suggested. So I believe that eventually a more sustainable way of living is going to involve less and less, and eventually no meat. And I do believe that fundamental to the whole process is a level of respect for the animal, and a belief that it should be treated reasonably throughout the whole process.
Probably talk about compassion as being the key virtue again. So killing animals isn't encouraged, or actually, Sikhs would not generally eat meat. But what the gurus do say is, just because you don't eat meat doesn't make you a holier person than the person next to you. So don't let it give you an ego trip. Say, that I'm vegetarian, therefore I am so much better than you. But yeah, compassion is the key virtue to talk about. So I am personally vegetarian. Sikhs don't believe that humanity is made in the image of God, because we don't believe in the God which a lot of you guys have been talking about, the guy in the sky with a beard. The Sikh view of a God isn't of an image. Sikhs don't believe God has an image as such. So therefore, humanity is no better than any other life form. We're all equally responsible.
Just briefly on something that was just mentioned, I don't know if other faiths believe that God is no man with a beard, but I don't think Christians believe that. Certainly not.
Sorry. I was thinking Santa Claus maybe. Yeah,
The man on the panel with the beard.
Yes, absolutely.
In terms of animals, it was originally said early on in the Bible that human beings could eat animals. In the Jewish society that God was Lord and King over before Jesus brought the gospel to all of us, there were certain restrictions on which animals could be eaten. I think they were generally more health-based in many ways. In the New Testament, it's been said that all animals can be eaten. We're free to eat all animals, but I think God created the universe, everything that's in it, and for His glory. And I think we certainly have a duty to respect and look after animals, or at least let them do their own thing, and not I'll go around killing them for sport. I think eating them within reason is certainly fine, and I think that's pretty much the answer to the question.
Okay. 9 o'clock.
Can I go outside then?
Amazing.
Come on.
I just want to say one sentence that the animals have to die. So I mean, animals do die. So and when they die, you know, I mean.
Yeah, but we don't usually wait for them to die.
Chris. So I think we just come to a stop now.
I'd like to thank everyone who's come sat on the panel.
Just a few things before we leave. It's already been said, it was fantastic. There were some tough questions asked today. I think all the members of the panel really stepped up and gave us some excellent answers. I'd also like to say a big thank you to John, who only stepped up yesterday when our president came down sick to chair the meeting. I'm sure you can appreciate it's not always easy to chair these kind of meetings. I think he did a great job. So if you could all welcome me and thank you, John, as well. If these kind of interfaith discussions are your thing, then next semester, Atheist Society is running a course every Friday called Perspective, in which case we'll be inviting a religious representative down each week to talk about their religion, to give people who attend a chance to ask questions, and it also includes a free meal, so it's, everybody wins.
Every week.
Absolutely. So yeah, that starts at the end of January next year, so keep an eye out for that. If you guys could come down. If anyone wants to know more about Atheist Society in general, if the committee could put their hands up, ask one of these people, there's plenty of us, to memorise the face. They'll be happy to tell you more about the society. And if anyone would like to continue the discussions, the Atheist Society social is about to kick off in about 5 minutes down there to the terrace. So that's a great chance to kind of chat to anyone who's down there in person. So once again, I'd just like to say a big thank you to our panel here for answering some tough questions.
If anybody wants any Mormon literature,
it's not a PhD
right now.
Alright, so Mormon fans, how are you doing today? Likely, if you're visiting the channel the first time, it's because I've got one of my wristbands. It has been noted. That was the first time that I've ever heard them say it has been noted in General Conference. Usually they say